For more on today's top political stories, let's bring in Nancy Cordes and Caitlin Huey-Burns. Nancy is CBS News' chief White House correspondent, and Caitlin is a CBS News political reporter. Nancy, let's start with you. The Biden administration, as we just discussed with Margaret, is discussing reportedly sending a top official to Kyiv to meet with the Ukrainian president. Any ideas in your notebook about who might that be?
Well, the president himself has said more than once that he'd like to go to Ukraine himself, but it doesn't look like that's in the cards right now. Even setting aside the obvious security implications, it would put him out of pocket for quite some time because you can't fly directly into Ukraine right now. He'd probably have to go somewhere like Poland first and then take a train across the border. That's a trip that takes many hours in both directions. So administration officials have kind of waved us off the notion right now that the president himself might go. More likely, they say, it would be a cabinet level official. And of course, the first person who comes to mind is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. But as you can imagine, White House officials are saying as little as possible right now about who might go and when they might go, because there are obvious security implications. But they've made it clear that they think there is a value to having a high-ranking U.S. official go into Ukraine, if only to show that the U.S. is in lockstep with the Ukrainians when it comes to this invasion.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, domestically, the president is traveling. It was actually the third day in a row the president has traveled, this time to the battleground state of North Carolina, where the president continued to lay the blame for inflation at President Putin's feet.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine has driven up gas prices and food prices all over the world. Ukraine and Russia are the 1 and 2 largest wheat producers in the world. We're number 3. They're shut down. We saw that in yesterday's inflation data. What people don't know is that 70% of the increase in inflation was a consequence of Putin's price hike because of the impact on oil prices. 70%. We need to address these high prices, and urgently, for working folks out there.
Nancy, I want to begin with you. The White House is pinning the blame on Putin. Take us inside the strategic thinking on that in the West Wing. And then, Caitlin, I want you to jump in, if you could, about whether Democratic lawmakers on Capitol Hill buy this as a strategy.
Well, the thinking is that this war could go on for quite some time. And if this oil crisis continues, if more and more countries try to peel away from buying Russian oil and gas, then energy prices are going to stay high. And we know that when energy prices are high, the cost of everything is high. And that's a big concern for a White House as we head into a midterm election, because they know, looking at past polling stretching back years, that Americans tend to blame the party in power when the economy is bad. So there's no question that the president is going to continue to go out there and make the case that this is largely the fault of President Putin. At the same time, polls show while most Americans buy that they understand that gas prices have gone up because of this war, that doesn't make them any happier about the fact that everything that they buy at the grocery store, even their rent, is going up. And so you're going to see the president conducting more events like the one that you saw today, trying to show that the White House is on top of this, trying to show that they understand that people are concerned about inflation, about the economy, that it's their #1 issue. The big challenge they have, Bob, is that there really isn't much that the White House can do to address inflation or the supply chain issues that predated the war in Ukraine that were also largely responsible for driving up the prices of just about everything.
Caitlin?
That's right. Well, I asked Senator Gary Peters, who runs the Senate campaign arm for the Democrats, about this. And he said, look, when he and Democrats hope that when people are filling up their gas tanks, that they're thinking about Putin and not necessarily the president. But to Nancy's point, there is a question about how long that can last. If these prices continue to go on through the summer and getting closer and closer to that midterm, that does make Democrats pretty vulnerable here. And ways that they're trying to address it, at least on Capitol Hill, are, last week, for example, you saw House Democrats bring in oil executives and try to, pin the blame on them for price gouging. They're also, echoing the president's rhetoric about Putin's price hike. They know, however, though, that their constituents and voters are really concerned about inflation and the economy. It ranks as top issues in our own polling that came out this week. And this is an opening for Republicans, certainly, who have been arguing that these increases predated the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And they are very eager to campaign on these issues, and they are very eager to go after Democrats on them. But the big question is how long this lasts and how long Democrats can sustain it.
Caitlin, they are eager. They're hitting these issues in campaign ads, but they're also running the Republicans on other issues, social issues. They're targeting cultural issues. They're talking about institutions, the establishment, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, is now walking away from the Commission on Presidential Debates. What does your reporting tell you about this decision by the RNC? Are they actually not going to participate in bipartisan, nonpartisan debates come 2024?
That's right. The RNC announced today that they are not going to participate in the debate sanctioned by the official commission. That's a nonpartisan commission that has been in existence since 1987, and that has jurisdiction over the general election debates, the 3 presidential debates that we have all covered, and the vice presidential debates, not the primary ones. But this really is sort of an airing of long-held grievances, if you really look at it, because the commission deals directly with the candidates and the campaigns for president, not with the RNC or the DNC. So this is really a messaging thing that they put out today. They also said that they are going to require presidential candidates running for the GOP nomination to sign a pledge that they won't participate in these debates. But again, the enforcement mechanism for that remains to be seen, because if the eventual nominee decides that he or she wants to participate in a debate, they probably could. But again, this speaks to your larger point, which is that this is a big, messaging coming from the RNC on those issues.
Yeah, it's probably also a negotiating tactic. These things can be changed on a whim come 2023, 2024, but there always is a negotiation between the DNC, the RNC, the campaigns, the Commission on Presidential Debates. So we'll see how this actually all plays out in the coming months. Nancy, bouncing off of this discussion, you got the Republicans running against the Commission on Presidential Debates, against the president on inflation, but you also have the Texas governor, a Republican, Greg Abbott, and others really highlighting immigration, border control issues. How is the White House responding to this array of Republican attacks, especially on immigration?
Well, they're essentially rejecting as a stunt the move that Governor Abbott made this week to send a group of migrants who are awaiting asylum hearings by bus up to Washington, D.C., essentially sending the message, well, if you want them to stay in the country, you deal with them. And so they all got in a bus and they ended up here in Washington, D.C. at Union Station. The White House kind of laughed that off as a meaningless gesture. What they're more concerned about is his decision to have state troopers conduct these blanket inspections of trucks coming across the border from Mexico. They are warning, trade groups are warning that this is causing major backups at the border. It's taking many, many hours for these large tractor trailers filled with groceries and so many other things to get across the border into the U.S. And they're warning that this is going to have an effect on prices at a time when they're already very high. Also could mean shortages at the grocery store. But so far, Governor Abbott is standing firm, and he's arguing that he is not going to let up on these inspections that the Customs and Border Patrol says are redundant because they're already doing inspections. He says he wants to cut deals with Mexican states across the border before he lets up. So this is a conflict that is going to continue to play out at least for several more days.
Caitlin, real quick, we have to leave in a second. What about Iowa? The DNC is meeting right now. They're trying to think through their 2024 presidential schedule. Is Iowa in or out?
Yeah, Bob, we may not be spending winters in Iowa anymore. I'm sad to report.
I love pork loin sandwiches.
Exactly. I know you both love spending your winters there. But the DNC is saying that they are going to reformat the caucus and debate process, raising a lot of questions about which states will go first. Some states have it written into state law that they have to keep their place. But there has been a lot of criticism of Iowa, especially after the fiasco that was the caucuses in 2020, but also coming under criticism from a lot of Democrats for it not being a diverse enough state to be able to go first and not really representing the party in terms of diversity. So you're going to see a lot of states trying to jockey for favor there. The DNC says that they are opening it up to 5 states to vie to go first. So there's an application process that starts next month.
It's going to be interesting to follow. I remember covering the Latino vote in Iowa last time around. It's a state that's more complicated on diversity and voter issues than broadly seen, at least. We'll keep following these stories. Nancy Cordes and Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you very much.